Welcome to Time of Death. This video is for informational purposes and in no way meant to glorify or condone violence. In today's video, we'll be discussing the murder of Ernest Nathaniel Creighton. Creighton was shot and killed on Monday, October 2nd, 2006, in the 4300 block of Western Avenue in Vermont Square, according to LA County coroner records. Christopher Mathis and Akil Robbins were subsequently arrested and charged with the murder. The following is the evidence at trial. On October 2nd, 2006, Ms. Brown borrowed her roommate's rental car and drove to her mother's house. The rental car was a red Chevy Cobalt. At her mother's house, Ms. Brown saw an acquaintance, co-defendant Akil Robbins, who asked if he could borrow the car to drive to his girlfriend's house. Defendant Robbins said he would return in 20 minutes. Ms. Brown asked why he couldn't get a ride from the people he was with, but Robbins didn't answer. Ms. Brown loaned him the car sometime around 5 p.m. and she never saw it again. Ms. Brown called the police, but instead of telling them the truth, she said she left the car unattended and an unknown person had taken it. At about 6 p.m. that same day, a witness was on a second-story balcony near the intersection of Western and Vernon. He saw a young man, later identified as the victim, Ernest Creighton, standing on Western. The victim threw a rolling 40s gang sign to someone across the street. The witness then saw a red car drive up and stop next to the victim. A man got out of the passenger seat, approached the victim, and shot him 5 or 6 times. The man got back into the red car, which drove away quickly. The witness could not identify the gunman. AG was waiting for the bus on the corner of Western and Vernon. He heard 3 or 4 gunshots coming from a red Chevy Cobalt that had its front passenger door open. Defendant Mathis was standing on the sidewalk next to the car holding a gun. Mathis fired another shot and got back into the car, which drove away fast. Defendant Robbins was driving. A patrol car responded to the shooting and engaged in a high-speed chase with a red Chevy, which finally stopped in the middle of the street. 2 men jumped out, Defendant Robbins from the driver's seat and Defendant Mathis from the passenger seat. The men fled down an alley. Police canine search teams were brought in and they discovered Defendants Robbins and Mathis hiding in 2 separate locations. A 9mm semi-automatic handgun was discovered under the driver's seat of the red Chevy. Defendant Mathis's fingerprints were found on the outside of the Chevy. The victim died from having been shot 5 times, twice in the head. A bullet recovered from his body matched the gun found inside the Chevy. Defendants Mathis and Robbins were identified as members of the East Coast Crips. LAPD officer Alfred Garcia testified as an expert on the East Coast Crips. The gang had about 300 documented members in Los Angeles and over 1,000 undocumented members were included. The gang had different sets or cliques, which are groups of individuals who commit crimes together. The 7-6 East Coast Crips was one such clique. Given the hypothetical grounded in the facts of this case, Officer Garcia opined that the shooting of the victim had been committed for the benefit of the 7-6 East Coast Crips. Having seen the victim flash a rolling 40s hand sign, the assailants would feel compelled to take violent action. Following the trial, the jury convicted defendant Christopher Mathis of first-degree murder and possession of a firearm by a felon, including gun and gang enhancements. Mathis was sentenced to state prison for a term of 50 years to life. The jury convicted defendant Akil Robbins of first-degree murder as well as felony evading, including gun and gang enhancements. The court sentenced Robbins to a term of 50 years to life for the murder and a concurrent term of 3 years for the evading. Ernest Nathaniel Creighton was 18 years old at the time of death.